Happy birthday, my brother.
Thank you, bro.
You know, I was
really
gonna start off that way, huh?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Our guy Royce today's his birthday, so we want to celebrate and say happy birthday to an amazing soul on this planet. Thank you so much for all that you've given, man. It's been really good. How you feeling today?
Thank you. Grateful, grateful for. I level up. I don't get older. I just level up. That's the kind of Welcome to midlife.
Yep.
We're just in that midlife grind. I'm thinking about where it is video game wise. I think this is end game, I don't know. But I mean, honestly, like today I'm most grateful for my family. Like they've been my kids are 19 and 21, and like they make bacon this morning because I don't eat meat normally, but like on my birthday I get to do that,
Right.
And my spouse she's great about organizing the whole thing and orchestrating it. But like family time is so precious to me right now because at the end of COVID, my guess is the two of them are like launching again, to whatever they're doing. So stuff like this is really precious to me.
That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, happy birthday.
How about you? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, man. Feeling good. I'm really excited just to have the show. We're on again. This is our 4th show. We have an amazing topic. We have 2 wonderful guests that are very unique and that have been out on the national or even international stage. So they've been out there kind of talking about a lot of things, and I think it's going to be very intriguing for all of the fans and the listeners for Where's Your Heart, because it's different, but it's needed. So this is going to be a good conversation, man. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Please make sure that not only are you, as you're engaging and as you're watching, but you find the time and the opportunity to share. Royce and I, our whole mission here is to hold the space of vulnerability and to really champion vulnerability. So if you think anyone needs to hear this, if they need to be a part of it, just create a watch party. You can do that right now. Just click it, put it on out, and then we'll all get a chance to engage and interact with each other. And if not, you can always go to Where's Your Heart on YouTube as well, where we have our episodes there. And then we're going to have a paywall coming up soon. So anyway, we have a lot of cool things happening with Where's Your Heart. We appreciate everybody tuning in and just being supportive. We've gotten, Royce, I don't know about you, man, but the feedback has been it's been a lot, and then it's positive, right? We've gotten some feedback on different ways to do things, our pace and stuff like that. But just the premise of it it's been amazing. It's been really amazing. Yeah.
And the type of feedback I'm hearing too is engaging. Like that's when you invite people to share it and do the watch party, like that to me is the heart of this show. It's an opportunity to engage around tough subjects in a different way,
right?
Not in the way that I see our culture, our wider culture, creating more and more space apart for people. And here we're trying to create a space where we deliberately engage differently. On the YouTube bit, for those of you who love doing audio but don't want to sit in front of a screen the whole time, we stream to YouTube, and that's Where's Your Heart 2020. If you search for that on YouTube, that's how you'll find it. And that'll of course allow you to just play the audio. We are looking at a way to do the podcast version. We're getting there. So little bit by little bit. Thank you guys for all the feedback and all the requests. We are working to accommodate them because we want this to be accessible. This needs to be accessible. That's the goal of this whole project.
For sure.
And as far as gratitude goes, that's another thing I'm grateful for. Like the types of the number of people who said to me personally, what Christy said last week about laying down the Superwoman cape. I was just like, and the number of conversations that generated, that was so powerful to people. So keep putting those capes down, man. And especially I would say to all my friends who are also people of color and are tired of the struggle, put the fucking cape down. It's okay for like we've got white people excited right now. I don't know. That's just my little blah. But it's okay to like get our asses going a little bit. Like, Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because my gratitude that stands out today, but really for the past week, it's really around tough conversations. So I had one conversation in particular with a white brother of mine, and we were talking about white supremacy
Yeah.
and what that means and how those two words can be triggering. And so it was interesting because we've known each other, we've been friends, kind of colleagues, friends for a while, but of course, this is a subject that never really came up. And so as we started to unpack like what that really means, or particularly for me, it got a bit testy for us, right? It was it was
Mm,
it was straining the fabric of our friendship and our relationship. And so
wow.
as we talked about it a little bit, not in a negative way, but you could just tell it was like, I don't agree, or I don't think that's right, or I don't feel. And this was coming from me as well. And so what I did appreciate and what I'm really grateful for is that we spent a lot of time there. So we talked about this intentionally for about 45 to 50 minutes. It was face to face, which, as much as we can, we try to encourage that. Obviously, right now we're going through COVID-19 and that could be challenging for people. However, being able to be face to face and then still being able to respect and honor each other at the end of that conversation, because there weren't any minds that were changed. And so I don't want to get too much into the topic because it wasn't about that. It was just the way that we went there. We talked about it. We were able to have a bit of a dialogue, and then we were actually able to move on, or at least table the conversation, not move on from it, but table the conversation for a little bit later. So I'm really grateful, just to have people in my life that are open to addressing this and talking about white supremacy and white
Yeah.
privilege and systemic racism. And these are things that are just, woven into the fabric of how we operate, and how for a lot of people, it's not real. It's not
Yeah.
something that they actually experience. So grateful for that, man.
Yeah. And especially around privilege. Like I still hear people not realizing that privilege exists.
Right.
And that's where I intersect with what you were just saying. I had a blast last week on TL's show, the Frontline Stereo podcast. It
Yes.
was it was really it was really awesome to talk with him, and just how many people are doing really important and needed work right now.
Mhm.
So check out Frontline Stereo podcast, all y'all. It's a good show. He has a very different perspective than like I know. I think he and I have some different perspectives. Um, I think he and you also have some different perspectives. I
Oh, for
think that's
sure.
kind of fun. Like
For sure.
just the variety of experiences in this stuff. Even though I know the two of you are pretty tight. So I think that's, man. I'm thankful for that dialogue.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, okay. So last week now, we got it up. You and I have been
Yep.
talking throughout the week. How you feeling about the last week, man? We've had 7 days. Anything stand out? Anything in particular that is
I
on
forgot to
top of
take
heart for you?
notes this week.
It's okay. It's all right.
No, because we had a I mean, first off, one of the headlines this morning was the number of children that died over the weekend to gun violence. I think Officer Braxton actually he was a guest on our show a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
He actually threw up a blurb about that on Facebook, and like yeah, in which it kind of broached. I'm starting to see more of the questions around black on quote unquote black on black crime, and I also just finished reading Between the World and Me, and I think Coates does a really good job of constructing the 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 systemic problem around these issues.
Mm,
So for those of you, I'll throw out a recommendation to white folks who haven't read that book yet. Read the damn thing. It is, in addition to just being beautiful prose and all that. He does a, even though it's 4 years old, 5 years old, which makes me furious at like how many times do we have to have these conversations. Well, apparently we aren't done yet.
mm,
But his book is so relevant, so dead on right now.
mhm,
So recommendation to white folks, if you haven't read that yet, go just pick it up. It's
mm.
not a tough read. It's an emotional read. Um, good
Check it out.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's good stuff, man. For me, it's a phrase that stands out, and it's prove it. Because
Ooh.
as you know, I listen to a lot of people, watch a lot of, far left, far right, far up, far down, whatever ism people want to attach to it. But I try to get a wide variety of things that I listen to. And I've noticed that there's a lot of um, prove this to me, right?
Yeah.
Which was interesting because you hear it in different ways, whether people are talking about the far left or the far right. And what's interesting about that to me is that even in those words is baked in systemic racism and supremacy, right?
Yeah.
Because it's coming from a position of dominance. It's coming from a position of, hey, just like when people say, go back to your country, right?
Oh God. Yeah.
It's implied in that statement that this is mine, regardless of, how it came here, and you can go or do it, whatever you want to do, but this is mine and it's here to stay. And so when I'm watching this and reading, but mostly just watching a lot, and it's always around, okay, if systemic racism, prove it to me, right? If there's really white supremacy, prove it to me. And it's pretty ubiquitous now, because I do think there is a critical mass of people that have a heightened sense of awareness. And I believe that it has sustained for much longer than people thought it would, but certainly more than it had in the past. And I think it will I think it's here to stay, which is great. But it's just interesting to hear that, because when you look at, even if you watch like a judge show, or I don't know, Law and Order or something like that, anytime a person gets up on the stands and says, you can't prove it, or you don't have any evidence, what does that usually imply? Guilt. Right?
Yeah.
It implies guilt. So I was laughing when I was watching it the other day. I was watching one particular news channel, and the whole thing was around prove it. And then, a little bit deeper into that, and then we'll move forward, was this whole mindset of not only proving it, but looking at it from the standpoint of, well, it's logical, right? It has to fit the traditional logic
Mm.
the logic of what we've been talking about, in order for it to be real. And that was just very interesting to me. So I've been sitting on that the whole week, man. This whole thing around proving it, and convince me that this exists or it doesn't exist.
I just throw up my hands on that, because I'm like, okay, so all the studies that show very clearly that the number one crime committer, the demographic that commits the vast majority of crimes in this country, is white males between the ages of 25 and 45. But that doesn't matter to you. We know that even though with that demographic, it's not white males that are being convicted of these crimes. Like, the conviction rates are so totally drastically different. So this is just the crime breakdown. And then there's the imprison rates. People of color serve much longer prison terms. Like, so if that doesn't show that there's racism in play, okay, so let's look at financials, right? And take a look at end of life wealth. Take a look at what's inherited to your children. Like, all of these statistics again show white people at the top of this, and white males in particular. How about life expectancy, right? Let's take a look at that. Let's just basic life, quality of healthcare. Like, we can go right down. This is not a matter of proving it. Like, the whole accusation of prove it is false from the get-go, because it's not a position that can. It's a position that is being taken in spite of the facts. The guests that we're about to have on here experienced gentrification in their neighborhood.
Yes.
Like, and we know that this shit happens. We know that for a fact that banks have discriminated against people of color. We know for a fact that people who create neighborhoods, who create subdivisions, we know for a fact, we've got the brochures, we've got the statistics. Like, like, we know that this is what was happening. Like, that's, how many times have we seen the footage of Trump doing that stuff? For example, just one of the many landlords in this country that had very racist practices that were overtly racist. Like, I guess that's the, like, I guess my accusation is, if you're a white male right now, you have to adopt a different hermeneutic, because the hermeneutic of suspicion, well, that might work in a courtroom. It means shit for real life. What we need is a hermeneutic instead of being able to examine the truth of what other people are saying, especially we have to have the assumption as white men that everyone else is more marginalized than we are, that we are at the center somehow. And we have to begin that conversation from there. This is my this is what I put out there for white men. Like, we got to be able to take the view of the black woman and say, all right, I'm reading what you're writing, and I have to say, how is this true? And then I have to go a step further and go, how does this actually affect me? Like,
Mm.
what part of me is in common with her? Like, what part of me is
Yeah.
over there that doesn't have voice right now? So that's, I mean, that's my assertion. Like, prove it? Are you kidding me? It's been proven. Like, there's
Well, it's see all yeah,
how the hell are you still having these conversations? Like, I don't know. I'm
because
dead tired of them.
I'm open to everything, man. I'm it doesn't mean I agree.
Yeah.
You know, it's just I really I'm adamant about creating space where people feel comfortable to communicate. That is like my premise, right?
That's
I
your
don't
core.
I don't want toxicity, but I do want candor. And
Yeah.
I think that if we can have this over time with some, not all, that we can actually evolve and reform and deconstruct really the
Yeah.
system. But I haven't seen it work well when people aren't communicating. Like, tell me any nature of any type of relationship on the face of this planet that works well where people aren't communicating in some way, shape, or form. Doesn't exist. So I just want to hold that space. And I think the more we can have difficult conversations with people we don't agree with and it still be respectful and we can keep coming back to it, I think that's how we eroded some of this issue. Um, so yeah, that's how I show up with this. But it's interesting because everything that we're talking about right now fits directly into what we're going to talk about with the show, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's around our neighbors, right? Or how are we neighborly or what that actually means? Like, what is it? Okay, I'll ask you. I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but what does that mean to you? Like neighbors. Define that word for you, my man.
Um, there's what I want it to mean,
Mm,
and there's what it actually like. I mean, I've mentioned my neighborhood a few times.
mm,
I can't wait to move because I can't I literally can't stand being around this much privilege, like, that is totally arrogant about its own privilege, and people refusing to wear masks and stuff. And I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. Um, but it what I want it to mean is connectedness.
mm,
Um,
mm, mm,
what I want it to mean is, you know, when when I hear the loud music next door, I go over and I knock on their door, and they know me and I know them. And it's, hey, it's 1 a.m. Do you mind? Um, and it's, oh God, no, I didn't even know you could hear that. I'm Because again, you are my neighbor, and I want to be connected. That's the kind of relationship I want with neighbors. Um, but that's like totally against what suburb is. Suburb is about distance from the other,
ooh, that's powerful.
and and uh,
That's
that's really
powerful.
frustrating to me. Um, that's the
Distance.
antithesis of what we need to be humans.
Right. Right.
We are meant to be, so we are social animals. We are meant to be in relationship. It's a basic need.
Right.
Um, and yeah, that's the whole thing about, isn't that? I mean, that's, to me, that's the story of a suburb, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's great, and we can actually dive into that. Of course, we do
Yeah.
that for another show. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I appreciate you sharing that definition. For me, when I think of neighbors, and mine may be a little bit more esoteric, but I think distance, um, it cuts it short, right? Because when you have depth and you're sharing the same soil, you're able to co-create and connect and then grow things from that soil. So
Yeah, yeah,
neighborly
yeah.
to for me means first, because everything that we're talking about right now is really centered around, are we as human beings courageously vulnerable enough to unpack our own shit,
Yep.
whatever it may be, right? And really step out of the whatever the bowl is that we're in and try to see things in third person. I know for me that's been part of my process, part of my healing process. And so one, how do you motivate or embolden that in people? That's one question. But then two, even if you're in it, how does someone even go through the process of starting to be courageously vulnerable enough to do it? And it's hard, if not impossible, when your success, your livelihood, and I would even argue your identity is attached to the very thing that you're trying to deconstruct. And
Yep.
that's where it gets challenging for me when I'm talking with people. But I also understand it because basically what they're saying is, you know, the way I've evaluated success in my whole life is not necessarily good for everybody, or it's only good for just me and my immediate circle. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work over a period of time, but it's hard for people to get to that point. So that's how I see it. How do we share soil where we're able to plant and
Yeah.
create and grow new things together? And that's where you can feed. So you grow up. So that distance where it's topsoil, distance doesn't really matter when we have deep connected roots.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how I look at it. And when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with organizations, that's what we talk about. First, you got to go deep with you. Then those that are around you or those that you're trying to co-create with, how do you fuse that together so you have shared roots? So when we have the weather up top, it doesn't matter if the hurricane comes through, we can still grow new things.
So a total throwback on that. Howard
Yeah.
Thurman, that was his thing.
Hmm.
Um, Talking about the first part of the process is going so deeply into yourself that you start to come up and see yourself in the other.
Yes.
That is, yeah. So
Yes. Yes.
connectedness.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So that's a great place to transition to our guest today. You ready?
I'm ready. Make this
Okay.
happen. Let's make it happen.
So we got two folks on here. The two of them together are the powerhouse behind Walks with Sean. I came across a story on CNN about uh, this young man who felt scared to go for a walk in his own neighborhood.
Hmm.
And like I saw that headline and I was just like, oh, I got to read this. And it unfolded and it's just incredible. So first off, if you haven't checked out their GoFundMe, it's on our Facebook page. I threw a link up there, and that's Walks with Sean on GoFundMe. But there's of course more to these two amazing humans. His mom also sells loose leaf tea. She's at sipology.com/wildabout loose tea. And she does crocheting. The thing that she's most proud of course, is her kids. These amazing young people that she's raised, and she talks just such deep love about her super smart husband. So I can't wait for our audience to meet her, and then her son. I hope he's got the wig. I hope he's got a wig because that's his little secret superpower, I guess. I'm deeply excited about that because in addition to starting these walks, he loves styling wigs,
Hmm.
and it was something we were talking about as we kind of got to know each other. The four of us, it was like all four of us are caregivers. We all spend, like, three of us are men, and we're in very not traditionally non-male spaces.
Hmm.
So uh, let's bring them on. We've
Let's
got
do it.
Lynn and Sean of Walks
Hey,
with Sean.
there we go. Hey, how you doing, guys?
What's
Hello.
up?
How are you doing?
Doing
Good, good.
outstanding. Thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. All the listeners, where's your
Yeah,
heart? Like, this is, we want to hold the space for your type of conversation, and we just been following up on everything that you've been doing, and we're just honored to have you on the show. So thank you so much.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Yeah.
What she said.
What you think?
Yeah. All right. So in our pre-show, we were talking about like personal moments
Mm.
and like words that were powerful for us. Sean, do you want to share the story that you shared? Just toss it out there. Yeah. See?
Sure. Um, so Torian asked me what my personal word is, and my personal word is yet. And the reason why my personal word is yet is because the story goes that when I was born with congenital pneumonia, um, and they thought I was gonna die. Um, they actually did an experimental treatment called ECMO, which is actually the treatment for one of the treatments for COVID now, but it was a very experimental treatment in 1990. Um, and so the doctor comes in and with a funny accent and goes to my mom, who's 23 at the time, and says, "Your son is very sick. We don't think he's gonna die yet." So
Mm.
one day, probably when I was 28, before all of the rest of the world life happened, I was like, "Wait a minute, nothing is impossible." Yet I'm living this yet that I was given is 28 years old. It's almost 30 years old now. It's like nothing is impossible in the span of this yet. That means if I've overcome death and bullying and and learning disabilities, yet it means nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And I love that too, because it's such an antithetical story. Like, it's so different than the way the US treats death. Like, we think of it as something that is an end. We think of it as way off there. We expect this like huge long life. And like to live with yet as something you walk with every day. There's so much power in
Mm.
yeah.
Small word that is extremely empowering and emboldens
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So we want to feature y'all's story here. I'm tempted to, Lynn, if you're up for it, just kind of dive in with like the story of your house and neighborhood and
Okay.
like what you saw
All right.
and then yeah.
All right. Well, let's try to make this quick.
You got time. Do your thing.
Impossible.
Impossible. The story of my house, it actually starts about 54 years ago. My mom was a very young widow from the Vietnam War, and she wanted to buy a house because her mother and her had talked a lot about legacy and building legacy with her family and not and giving and doing better. And so she found this house on the corner of Knox. And the house was immaculate. It was beautiful. My mama fell in love with it. She thought it was wonderful. But it came up for sale very quickly. And the reason why it came up for sale was that the house next door was bought by another black couple. And the man that lived in our house looked out his backyard and said, "Jesse, what are you doing here?" And he said, whatever the man's name was, he said, "Sir, I bought this house." And the man immediately put this house on the white man immediately put this house on sale, up for sale, because he
Wow.
wasn't living next door to. So
Bleak.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So my mom bought the house, and the sale went through so quickly that they literally had to rent the house from this pregnant black woman for like a couple of months because they didn't have anywhere to go.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so
Wow.
so I grew up in this house. I grew up in this neighborhood. I went to school. I was bused to a school that was way away because they closed the neighborhood school because they didn't want to desegregate it. But I grew up in this neighborhood. I had friends. I had family. My aunts and uncles. My aunts all lived around within walking distance of me, and I'm an only child, so I was everybody's extra kid.
Mm.
So my aunt had two, so I was number three. My other aunt had one, and I was her second until she had another baby, and then I was the third. But it was always neighborhood.
Yeah.
And, the neighborhood changed. My next door neighbor was my babysitter and my granny, and she raised me. Her husband was a pastor. I was baptized at that church. I grew up around the corner. This was just the neighborhood where I grew up.
So in that neighborhood, it was changing from white to black, right?
It's changing from white to black.
And then what area are you in right now? I'm just for the listeners so they can. What city?
Nashville.
Nashville.
I'm in South Nashville.
Okay.
So we live in the 12th South neighborhood.
Okay.
If anybody's familiar or they Google it. So I grew up here, went to school here, graduated from high school, went off to college, all those things. And got married, had my kids, but this was always home and it was always neighborhood because my family's very close. So I was at my mom's house every day. My kid's babysitter, my youngest babysitter was a couple of streets down.
Mm-hmm.
My aunts were still around the corner, still just within this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then as I started raising my kids. So my kids were familiar with this neighborhood. They went, this is where grandma was. This was where great grandma was. This was where their great aunts and uncles and things were. This is where the gathering place was for our family. Quick side note, this house was so much the matriarch house. My grandmother was too old to live by herself. She actually built a mother-in-law suite onto this original house.
Wow.
That is now my master bedroom.
Wow.
So so that's a legacy for us. It has become legacy.
Yeah.
But we've
Legacy.
grown up. The kids grew up here. They went off to they did whatever they did. But as we got older, again, I'm an only child, and I told my mom, I said, Mom, either I'm gonna have to move in with you, or you're gonna have to move in with me because we're stuck with each other. I'm gonna have to. I got to take you to the doctor. It doesn't make any sense for us to be. So she built a house. About this time, it was starting to gentrify, and they were starting to buy the houses and buy these houses for little or nothing. People had scrapped and saved and done all kind of things, to make sure that they had these houses.
Yeah.
The one next door, Mr. Jesse's house, actually ended up getting sold because his son was into drugs deep, and they used it as bail money, whatever.
Mhm.
But as we grew up, the houses, we got gentrified and whatever. And I said, Mom, and my mom said, well, I'm just gonna sell my house, and Marcus just went ballistic. Grandmama, you can't sell the house because Nanny sold her house, and then you sell the house. And it's like, Marcus, calm down. She acts like you. Just be quiet. She's not gonna sell the house. It'll be cool. But she decided to build a house in her backyard. She calls it a little cottage, but don't let anybody fool you.
It's the house. It's a full home.
It's bigger than my house, actually.
Okay.
But so which is, it's not. But she'll tell you if you ever ask her. She says, it's my little cottage. Yeah, Mom. No cottage. No. But anyway, so those are the changes, and so Marcus, when I got married the second time to my current husband, he stayed with my mom. He didn't move with us when we moved
Mhm.
to the apartment because he said, I'm almost graduated from high school. No, my grandmama's getting older. Somebody needs to make sure that he's there. One of the things I call him is he was always the person that, as the family got older and people needed to be in the hospital. My mom was a caretaker. She's been a caretaker all her life. She was the go-to nurse for the family. I always call Marcus my hospital hall walker and my hospice walker, and he everywhere my mama went, he would take care. He'd make sure she was eating. He would make sure they were there. He would make sure everything. So
Beautiful.
stayed and lived with her. Then she built the house in the cottage. He moved in with her, and I and my husband and my daughter moved into the main house or the original house. But things changed, and you started walking around the neighborhood and people were looking at you strange. This was not anything new. You got the messages on the Nextdoor app about a suspicious looking black man. Well, why is he suspicious? It's like, if you ever saw my husband, he's kind of nerdy looking. He's tall, but he's kind of nerdy looking. I'm trying to figure out why they were so scared of this guy.
But I have a question for you. So, because you're describing how the neighborhood went from predominantly white, right, to predominantly black, to being gentrified back to a predominantly white area. I'm gonna dive. I know we're a little, off our plan a little bit, but I'm curious about when it was predominantly black. What made it feel like home? Like, because I hear a lot of stories about, before the civil rights movements and things of that nature, where black neighborhoods, pretty much any Martin Luther King in most cities was a thriving area where the economics, because I'm an economic person, right? Where, I had a cleaners, you had a grocery store, your money from the grocery store went to the baker, and money cycled through the neighborhood. I'm just curious about, how did that change? Right, because I didn't live in that, so I'm just curious for you. How did it morph from being all black and being positive and economically progressive to not being the same as time went on?
Okay, so our generation, my mom's generation, came up, and I guess the baby boomers, and they were getting houses, and we talk about redlining and whatever. So this neighborhood was. It was all mostly black, but there was also a lot of apartments directly. The apartments that used to be directly across the street from me used to be the adult, the married student apartments for Vanderbilt and Belmont.
Oh,
and
wow.
so they've torn all those down and made those into tall and skinny duplex thingy, 3 levels. But as I was growing up, it kind of phased out of being the married student housing and became, just regular rental property. And so the kids that I went to school with and that were my age all lived in the apartments across the street. There were most of the people who owned the houses, the black folks that owned the houses in my neighborhood were actually very much older than me. So the kids that were my age lived in the apartments.
Gotcha.
The young man I was talking about that lived next door to me was at least 10 years older than me. The people down this, Miss Alexander's children were actually my granny's children who raised me and babysat me and went to church. Her children are grown, so her grandchildren are my contemporaries. So those are people that I played with.
Okay.
So those are those people, and then as they got older and died out, and their family, using the specific example of my granny across the street, her kids, she raised her kids to do well. So they had houses. All of their children had houses. So her house was not a necessary house. And they didn't want to split it. That wasn't a horrible, they didn't steal this particular house, but they didn't necessarily give her what it was worth. They actually bought that house when she died. They bought that house for like $240,000. They built a house in the backyard and sold it for 5.5.
Jeez, 5.5.
And then they took the profit from that and gutted her house and sold that one for 5.5.
Right.
So so that's what's happening. So therefore you're priced out of the market.
Yeah.
We are by no means, able to, pay that much money for housing.
Right.
So that in this particular neighborhood, they priced us out of the market.
Right.
But they also took property, took property away that was worth something, but previously was probably redlined.
So let me ask you a question, because I'm sure we have some listeners and some people that would say, and I'm putting it aside on this one, that stories like this are actually proof that Black people own things and redlining wasn't a real thing, right? So if you can touch on that a little bit, and then the second part of it would be, and this is just my personal passion, the importance of understanding economics, because as much as we're looking for social justice, and I think those are they are important, at the foundation of how the United States works and really any type of suppression or oppressed system, it's built around economics, right? And understanding the importance of these things. So anyway, I'm just curious about your thoughts on that, and then we'll move forward.
I was going to say, we got to get to Sean too.
I know. I'm trying to stay on task. I'm sorry.
Go, Lynn, go.
Definitely, with regard to the redlining, yes, we own property, but we also own property in not the premier area. And you couldn't necessarily buy property. I couldn't buy a house in Royce's neighborhood. Gotcha. There is actually, to make a point, the most elite area in our neighborhood in Nashville is called Belmead. There is actually documentation on file that you cannot sell property to slaves or descendants of slaves.
Wow.
So, if there's a law like that in Nashville in the Belmead, then, so yes, we could own property. But then we forgot. So we can blame everything on, redlining or white folk or Black folk. No, we all have to take the responsibility, because a lot of times we didn't understand as Black people legacy. You didn't realize how hard your mama worked to pay that. My mom's house cost $12,000 when she bought it. Her house note was, I think, $87 a month.
Man, let me buy about 20 of those right now.
Thank you.
Right now.
So you didn't realize how, as a child, your parents didn't raise you. Our parents in that generation didn't raise us to understand how hard it was to pay that rent and keep that legacy. So you always were looking for something bigger and better. And then and nobody wanted to take care of grandma. After grandma had scrimped and saved and done, they worked to pay this house note and made sure that, she had everything that she needed and you had everything you needed, so that you didn't value that. And so there is responsibility on both sides, and I always tell my kids about legacy and teach them, okay, this is the legacy. These are the things that we're going to do because this is the legacy that my mom set out for me.
Yes.
Like, Mama, you cannot sell this house because this is our legacy.
Yeah.
You can't leave us $500,000 in life insurance. That's not feasible for you. Which is what a lot of times, that's how a lot of white folk get wealth that we didn't know about.
Well, and it's funny that you say that. I'm actually what you're describing, I'm actually in the process of working through that with my parents, particularly my mom right now, and having that conversation about legacy and generational wealth and how that builds into political, being able to voting blocks and things that could possibly be done in the Black community. So I appreciate you saying that, because one of the things that I always talk to people about, and it's digested well in some places and maybe not in other places, is that we have an internal and an external conversation that needs to be had right now in the Black community, right? And externally, right, systemic racism, we're talking about white supremacy, all these different things, no question, that needs to be had, it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be unpacked, right? But then internally, we have some challenges, and it's based in trauma, right? Regardless of where the trauma comes from, that we know, right? That maybe if Royce wasn't on the call right now, Royce, I'm just, I'm jabbing you, but seriously, that if Lynn, Sean, and Torian were talking, that we would talk about some things, and it might be a little bit different conversation. And I think that in our community, we have to be flying that plane while we are actually changing the wings. We have to do both at the same time, because that's where the healing and addressing the trauma, regardless of where it comes from and how we operate, is a part of making sure that the system is more equitable for everybody.
Absolutely. And I think for me, it's looking at, and I'm going to blame Torian and my mom's generation and Royce, your generation, for being a very
old, Torian. I'm sorry.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. Like, yo, how old you think I am, bro?
But anyway, okay, I'm sorry.
But because your parents had worked and fought and struggled to give you what you needed, you forgot to tell your children what it cost. I remember, Mama, I must tell this story that I never tell. Sitting at the dining room table, it was just me and you on Meridian Street, and going, we got to move to Grandmama's house because after the divorce, we got screwed. And how do we? So I remember calling my grandma, going to my grandma saying, "Grandma, we're coming to move back over." And it was my mama kind of used me, but it worked because I'm the favorite. But to ease into moving back to Grandma's house, so we lost my childhood home, even though this was always home, because dads weren't in the picture correctly because they didn't know how to be in the picture correctly. I won't even blame my poor father, bless his soul, because he will see this. He just didn't know any better. But because of that, then we have to move back into grandmother's house, which was a blessing in disguise. But it was hard. But a lot of kids don't get to have that hard conversation with their mom. That hard, and wait a minute, we got to pay the rent. Okay, wait a minute, it's tax time. We got to figure out how to find the money for the taxes, because parents are like, oh, everything's perfect. You want new Jordans? Here you go. We're gonna take out a title loan out on our car to get you new Jordans.
Don't get me started on that stuff, man.
Yeah. No, I appreciate hearing that, because it's something that I tried to be conscious of. My kids are, I mentioned earlier, 19 and 21. And it's something that I've tried to be conscious of, but it's something that you're absolutely right. I haven't made it real with them the same way. And I mean, to Lynn's point, interesting notion here. I actually couldn't afford a house in my neighborhood either. We're renting. When we moved here 7 years ago, we thought we'd rent a place. Yeah, we thought we'd rent for a few years while we found a place to live in Albuquerque, because it was kind of a rush to move here. We were moving for my spouse's job, and and now in addition to not wanting to live here, we couldn't afford a home here. So I'm with you on both fronts. So you mentioned earlier the Nextdoor app, and that figures into, by the way, the impetus behind Walks with Sean. Sean, can you kind of pick that thread up, like your like lightning strike moment here that led to this thing?
Okay, so I'm gonna rewind Pat or to
Yeah,
the
do you?
when Nextdoor became popular, which was 4 or 5 years ago. I remember reading a story or a post saying suspicious black man walking down the street. And I remember, and it was like, oh my God, and be careful. It's black people walking over Now, mind you, I grew up in this neighborhood when it was mostly completely black. I mean,
Yeah,
it was black, black. You had grandmamas on literally the side of the street, across the street. I had four grandmamas that I could get a whooping. Report card time, I collected
Yep.
dues on report card day. Um, I ate Sunday dinner. We got babysat. So you're telling me that I'm the people who look like me are suspicious? My
Mhm.
aunts and uncles live around the corner. So I snapped. I took my mama's phone, which sometimes I do when I want to be aggressive, because I can't. There's the stereotype of a mad black woman, but I could, as a black man, they might have come and found me for what I said that
yeah,
day 5 years ago. Like, no, my husband and my son live here, and they're not. I mean, I wrote this post as my mother snapping, and then I barely went on Nextdoor again for 5 years.
yeah,
And this day, after Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, this particular day, I'm sitting on my front porch, and I can't make it. I'm trying to lose weight. That was actually my goal. I was trying to get in shape because I had bought new sneakers to go walking during COVID because I wasn't working. So you might as well lose some weight. And I'm about to turn 30 at the end of the month. So it's like, let me get my body right for 30.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 That was my goal. But I walked out the front porch and I stopped and I couldn't go any further because I'm watching all this brutality. I'm seeing the social. And then I'm remembering next door, suspicious black man. And then I'm looking at Ahmaud Arbery and remembering that my family reunions every 2 years are in Brunswick, Georgia. And I live in a neighborhood that's gentrified. So if I turn the corner, if I'm walking and it gets dark, or if it's light for that matter, somebody could, if they call the police, because sometimes I don't even know how to call the police. Ahmaud Arbery did not get killed by the police.
Mm.
Yeah.
If they're agitated by my presence as a black man in America, I'm dead. So I decided in that moment, it's like, I can't do it. So I went back in, I called my mom, and I'm like, I couldn't go walking. And she said, well, go to bed, we'll try it again, or whatever she said to calm me down. My mom's my neighbor, so I probably even might have went to her house and said, I can't make it. And the next day I tried it again because I'm like, I got to get in shape. I'm about to be 30. I'm trying to be a whole snack in the streets. But
A whole snack in the streets. I love it.
but I could I couldn't make it off the porch again. So that's how I called my mom. She said, no, I will not. You will not. Give me 5 minutes. I'm putting on my shoes. So my mother puts on her shoes, um, and we go walking, and we have me and my mom, or it's weird. We're mom and son, but we fight like brother and sister. We have this banter like brother and sister.
Mm.
So we're walking like brother and sister around the neighborhood, having fun and talking, and not even I still, even when I would walk before that, I had my phone and my ID in my hand to walk in my neighborhood. I had my phone on. I'd be talking to my mom or a friend or something. So if somebody hurt me or I got in trouble, they would hear, at least they would get a proof that I was in trouble.
Yeah.
And I had the ID because a couple of years ago, the police stopped me to prove to me, to make me prove that I lived in my neighborhood.
Mm.
So I had all these patterns and practices, and all of a sudden I can't walk. So I posted on Facebook. I'm like, today, yesterday I wanted to walk and I couldn't. Today I wanted to walk and I still couldn't. And I told my mom she walk with me. Um,
Oh, sorry. This
and
is
so
a
that,
comment from one of our viewers. They
Yeah,
were they
yeah,
were agreeing with some of the things that you were saying about how you walked in the neighborhood.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
um, and so I posted this thing, and I did not post it on Nextdoor first. I can prove
yeah.
it from the timestamps on the post. I posted it on Facebook first, and literally, I promise you, God said, the voice from heaven. It was really that said posted on Nextdoor, and I'm like, I will not do it. They think I'm suspicious. They don't like me. I'm not going to do like. And God was like, do it anyway. And I was like, okay.
Mm.
I knew enough to not argue with God in that moment, so I
Mm.
posted. Before I could even get out of the shower good after my walk with my mom, and she had posted right before me, and she was mad. She was a mad mama because her son was scared, and she didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I posted almost in response to her. I'm telling the story, and all of a sudden I edited my mom's name. I think that's the only difference. And I put I have lived in this neighborhood. My family's lived in this neighborhood on the corner of Ninth and Knox for 54 years, and and I put like a subject line, and then I wrote posted the story. And all of a sudden, everyone wants to, and I'm gonna be ugly. It ended up being this flurry of white guilt,
Mm.
is what it felt
Mm-hmm.
like.
Tell
Yes.
us
Oh,
more
you
about that.
should
Tell us more.
you shouldn't feel like this. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The tears, you can see the privileged tears that you always see in Black Lives Matters movements and things like that. You see the tears.
Yep.
Oh, this is so sad. And I was like, whatever. Literally, that's my mood. But the response kept coming. And one of my family friends was like, okay, we're going to walk because you can't be afraid. Okay, we're going to walk. So her and my mom, I think they were conversing at the same time next door, and we met at a restaurant. Well, we said, well, we're going to, I don't even think we said it in our minds. We're like, okay, all these people want to walk. We'll tell them where we're going to walk tomorrow. We pull up to the parking lot, 75 people are there, including my music teacher, who is who's a community, has a community choir that I was in. I've been alumni for 12 years. God, I'm old. And I've been
Oh,
a part of the organization for 16 years.
Okay.
But also, her history was rooted in this neighborhood. Her
mm,
family lived in the neighborhood. Her father was a civil rights attorney in the 50s and 60s. My
Mm.
English teacher from high school showed up, and
Wow.
all these people, and there was no planned walk. There was nothing there. Even the picture you see, the lime green shirt
Mm-hmm.
and the I literally, I kid you not, went to Macy's again, God moment. The day before the walk at 4:30, the walk started at 6. I went at 4:30 to get a shirt and athletic clothes. I really didn't have like workout clothes. And then something in my head was like, you might need to get something to wear. Like I almost God told was like instructing me that this moment is way bigger than you think it is. What
yeah.
you're about to do is about to be big. So I spent my last $30 from my COVID check to go get an outfit from Macy's.
Mm.
Um, we get there, and I literally there was no plan. There was no, and I'm standing there, and I'm like, "Oh my God, thank you for coming." We didn't know where we were walking, so I take off
Yeah.
walking down 12th Avenue South in Nashville, Tennessee, down the sidewalk, down the hill to the park where I had played as a child,
Mm.
and we walked. And we walked past. There's a bridge, and I'll tell
Mm,
you, this is my experience with gentrification. And we looked at it the other day, last Thursday at the walk. There's a plank of wood, like a shrewd wood bridge, down in a ditch. That was the bridge we went over to get to the park or
Mm.
get across the little ditch.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my mom probably went across. But that's what I helped my elderly next door neighbor, who actually, I promise you, the neighborhood was such a family oriented place that this neighbor, we still spend Christmases with her family.
mm.
She's been dead 11 years.
Oh
We
my
still spend
gosh.
Christmases with her family and birthdays and graduations and weddings. And it's not like we the extra. No, like we are the family. Like it's DNA. I promise you, you could cut me and we would bleed the same blood.
Mhm.
But I helped her walk to that porch, walk
So,
across that plank. Now, when I did this walk last Thursday, there is a gorgeous bridge and gorgeous sidewalks in this park.
Mm,
They
Mm.
cost, somebody told me, $700,000. But when the neighborhood was full of elderly and aging black women and men,
mm,
they had to walk across a plank.
Mm.
I've
Mm.
seen it change in my lifetime,
Right.
yeah.
and so that's the story.
Mm.
Yeah.
So there's so many different places I want to go with that, but
So before we do, so you
go ahead.
threw James's comment up there. James is he's a Native American, so when he talks about his ribbon shirt, he's slowly educating my little white soul on some of the traditional stuff. But the ribbon shirt is a traditional thing for his tribe, and that's he goes walking with his spouse and their son, and it's always I get to see him on Facebook doing this, so I love the like being visible in the neighborhood matters thing, and I think that's what I'm hearing him say there.
Mm.
So yeah, Torian, go with your thing.
No, there's so much to unpack there because gentrification is happening everywhere. I mean, I lived in New York for a while. I mean, you go to parts of Brooklyn, South side, west side of Chicago, I mean, all cities in the United States. I guess my question would be, or just a discussion around, so what should neighborhoods look like, right? Is it integration? Is it separation? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, but I always look at things from a standpoint of, so how do we coexist?
What do we do with this?
What do we do with this? How do we create some solutions? So
I think that in every neighborhood, every person should have an opportunity, no matter socioeconomics. There should be a place in every area for everyone to live.
okay.
There should not be a. I happen to live in a very nice neighborhood, but and it was even funny, like having this conversation with friends, that I became the sellout because when you look at the picture of the first walk,
Oh, wow.
I'm standing in a sea full of white people.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been called
That's
that over the
my
past few weeks too.
but
Okay.
that's my neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
He got called a sellout. They said that I was a protester. So hey, I don't
But
understand.
that's the crazy thing about all these labels. Like, it's from
Right.
people that I know and have had a relationship with. Even with this show, let me just be candid. We're talking about vulnerability. The fact that Royce and I co-host this and it's centered around how we feel in vulnerability, people are like, no, like at this point, you're Black, you should only be doing things with Black people.
Yeah. And that's where the problem is. And that's where we have to stop, because the walk has gotten big. People keep saying, well, we want to walk, or when are you going to walk again? And we're getting emails from people around the country wanting us to walk with them. Great, we can walk, but we have to have conversations. The walk is not going to do anything. It's not going to solve anything if y'all don't talk to each other, if you don't get to know your neighbor. We knew when I was a kid, I knew who I could get to. I knew if I could get to if I could get to Miss Lewis's house, or if I could get to my granny's house, or even if I wasn't close to home, I was okay. If I was off over 2 streets over, if I got to my aunt's house, nobody was gonna mess with me. And my house was a safe house. It was a safe yard. So you knew. You don't know that in these neighborhoods, even with children and adults, and with all these negative things happen. And it's not just black and white. Little kids need to be able to know that Miss Lynn's house is safe, and if somebody's chasing her, if it looks like a weirdo man or a weirdo woman or something is following her, she needs to be able to know, I can come to Miss Lynn's house. Her door is going to be open. She's going to take care of me. She's going to make sure that if she calls my mama and I get some banana bread, or I'm going to be okay, and this person is not going to get me. These kids don't know where to go. If you get in our neighborhood, it's 12 South has a lot of bars and things on actually 12 South. If you get drunk and you don't want to drive, or you get you need to or something, some adult is following you with a nefarious reason, you need to be able to know somewhere on Gilmore, if I can get to Miss So and So's house and knock on her door, she'll let me in, and she'll know that she'll let me in, and whoever this is won't be able to get us. We'll be okay. We don't know that in this neighborhood. We don't know that, and so we keep talking. We talk to people. Marcus walks. He just walks, and he talks on his thing, and he does all these things. But what I try to do as I'm walking with him is I try to drop back and actually have conversations with people.
Yeah.
And it's like, these people are like, well, tell me your story. And I'm so sorry. And it's like, okay, I understand.
So,
and
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but we're touching on something. I know we're running over time. We're working on.
I got one more question before we cut this one.
No, it's all good. I think we should keep going because Lynn, I'm with you. We, Native Black Americans, are in a lot of pain. Right? And regardless of where it comes from, how we got it, generational, in our communities, external, it's something that we have to address. So my question is, especially for you and your background and growing up and seeing thriving, open Black communities, what do we actually do to create that environment where we can have conversations, even with people we don't agree with, even with people who may not even like us? I'm not saying, threatening and stuff like that, toxicity, but just how do we start to have deeper connections with people that are rooted in something beyond something that's cursory?
There's two things. We need to work to build community, and but the difference is, and the hard part for you and I and Sean is that we're not going to go knock on our neighbors' doors because we don't know who they are.
Mm.
We don't understand. We don't know what we're going to get when we go there.
Mm.
Royce would be more than happy to knock on the neighbor's door and say, "Hey, this is Royce. My wife made some banana bread." But we have to get to a point where we are having conversations beyond these walks, because these, the walks are great. People want to talk, but talk to me after, or call me after the walk, or let's meet let's do a different community activity.
What's next?
What's next? I mean, the walk is a start. Let's
Mm.
do something more different, bigger, so that we're not back in this same place. The second thing is, one of the and to this point, there was a young couple down at the end of the street who came to my mom's house and knocked on the door and talked to Marcus and brought him some wine and some banana bread and said, "Hey, the onus is not on you. It's our responsibility to meet our neighbors. We were new.
Wow, that's
We
powerful.
were the neighbors, and we were the new people. So it was up to us, and you wouldn't have gone and knocked on our door if you saw us. If we see you on the street, if we're outside doing something, you see them, outside, we'll speak to them. But we're not going to go much beyond that, because we don't know if you want to speak to us or how you feel or whatever. Come over, and say, "Hey, my name is,"
Yeah.
"Do you need anything," or whatever, and have that conversation. Be open to those conversations, but also be open to the uncomfortable conversations.
Mm.
I don't want you to feel bad and have white guilt, or as they say it, and the fragility. I don't want you crying. I want us to solve this problem.
No, but I'm with you. Like, I've been saying this. Right, and chime in, Royce, 'cause I know you want to say something, bro. I know you do. But that's what I tell my friends. I said, listen, because I have brothers and sisters of different races, different backgrounds, and that could be triggering for a lot of people right now. But whatever, right? But I tell my white brothers, I said, listen, man, I don't want you to apologize to me. I don't want you to cry to me. What I would like is for a deeper self-awareness from you, whatever that means to you, right? I would like a level of acknowledgement, because I do feel like I'm privileged. My mom pretty much gave up her whole life for me to be able to do some amazing things with my life.
Absolutely.
And I'm very grateful for that, right? That's why I'm back here taking care of her now. But acknowledgement that there is difference, that there are real systemic issues that didn't just go away 50 years ago when a few laws were changed, kind of, right? Those things still exist. And then hopefully, if you are a person that's courageously vulnerable enough to really dig deep into yourself, that you have different actions too in your life. And you're not only bridging the gap, but you're going deep with you and trying to go deep with people who don't look like you, who don't come from where you come from, and holding that space. Those are the kind of human beings that I would like to be around. But it's difficult to do that if you feel like you're better than someone, and or you can't trust someone because of whatever reason you've decided to justify it. So I'm with you. That's why I'm so passionate about what we're saying, because I really think that's one of the ways to do it.
I think
you got it, Sean.
Go ahead, Sean.
And I think just getting to know people, and the thing is, the onus isn't, and I think that's the thing. For so long, it was that, even in the pre-conversation we were talking about, or where y'all were talking about, you prove it. It's like, well, why do you feel this way? That's not how it is. No, it is how it is. Let me go down the list and unpack my family history in this neighborhood and the letters in red ink I read to tell my grandmama to sell her property. The reason why you're in your house right now. Let's talk about that. But I don't have to do that. I think the thing about the walks that has been so profound to me is, for some kind of reason, I did not develop anger as an emotion, or hatred as an emotion. They are not. So even my post, as difficult as it was for people to read, I did not blame anyone.
Yeah.
I did not blame
you just
Royce. I did not
own to the feeling.
I blamed me. I felt this is what I feel. I own this feeling. And then I was able, and I've had some really amazing conversations, and even like to think about like opportunities for advancement in career. Like personally, there are, uh, when I graduated hair school, which was 11 years ago, I went to salons, and my mom can attest to this, up and down 12th Avenue in my neighborhood. And each one of those salons said, I don't fit the demographic of stylists that they needed.
Hmm.
Why is that in 2009 that a black man can't get a job in a salon, that he is educated enough? And if you had taken the time to understand who I was in my education, I actually went to a school that was predominantly Caucasian, so I'm more proficient at Anglo-Saxon hair than African American hair, because I went to a school where the clientele was white and there were highlights and colors. But
Yeah.
so I didn't get to have a neighborhood in a job in my neighborhood because I didn't fit the demographic, because I was a kid with coarse hair
Hmm.
with darker skin. So those opportunity gaps still exist. The opportunity gaps that the Civil Rights Act should have destroyed just kind of took on different faces.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's like, now, what are my goals after this? Where do we go from here? Is to create the space, to create the salon. I don't know how we're going to do it, but there'll be a black salon in my neighborhood where black stylists can come and anyone can come, so that people can get their hair done, because Vanderbilt and Belmont have black students and they're right around the
Yeah.
corner. But they have to go all the way to Jefferson Street, where TSU and Fisk are, to get their hair done. That's ridiculous,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because so you have
And,
to fix the system.
So
well,
the
and let's be real clear. Like just a little bit I know when we talk. Let me translate here. Privileged translator. That's my job. Um, when we talk about what the salon is, it's a place where we have conversations. Like
Mhm.
that's the other thing that I think a lot of white folks don't get. It's for a lot of white folks, it's how quickly can you chop this and whack that and send me back on my way. In a lot of other neighborhoods and communities, the salon is a meeting
Oh
place.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's a
It was
barbershop. That's the
like
beauty house.
you
Yeah.
weren't going to read about your neighborhood in the news, unless something horrible happened. Like, but you went to the salon because that's where you'd get the news of the neighborhood. Like,
Mhm.
so let's be clear. There's a lot at work there. That's freaking amazing, Sean. That's really cool.
It is. It
So
is.
the other thing that I will say that, and again, I don't, bitterness and anger is not what I believe or what I've raised my kids to believe, because you just have to. There's things that just happen. Life is not fair, and you have to do stuff. But the thing about it is we as Black people have had to assimilate. We had to normally, um, we automatically had to assimilate. I was
Mhm.
bused. So in my first grade
Yep.
class, there was probably three little Black kids. And
Yeah.
so and one of them was a boy, and the other one was a girl, and the girl liked to fight people, and so I had to I had to learn how to be friends with Beth and Sally and Becky and Elizabeth,
Oh,
and
Mama, you said Becky.
well, I did have a friend named Becky. I did. So
She
and
meant
so
it in the purest context of
in
the
the
word,
country,
Oh,
not the
with
derogatory stuff.
them looking at, and my hair didn't look the same as theirs, and
Yeah.
my well, I'm almost as dark as you, and I'm like, dude, mine is from inside out. These are the things that we heard. We've always had to assimilate
Yeah.
Yep.
into the white society
I can identify with that.
to get your education, do anything. White folks
So
did not have to do that.
so thing I've started saying like on this topic is especially white men who are at the peak of this like privilege thing, even though there was economic disadvantage for me personally and for my family growing up sometimes, but like I didn't really understand what privilege was for a long time. Okay, but my assertion right now is if we want to actually deal with this problem as white men, as white people, we have to become multilingual. And that means I need to go to a hair salon where I was not their target demographic, and I got to just shut the fuck up and listen and just be present and just hear the stories and like that. And that's where where when we talk about what is required here, it's that the privileged folks have to begin learning to speak the other communities that are out there. Because everyone speaks my language. Why do I need to change? Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And
The
it's
code,
interesting. I'm sorry. What did you say, Lynn?
the code switching,
Code
which is
switching. Yeah.
Yeah.
what
Code
my
switching.
Yeah.
Yep.
is what my daughter taught me, and I said I didn't do it very
No,
well.
it's a real thing. Everything you're saying is very relevant. Like for me, I grew up in different areas in my childhood, and so I've always had to assimilate. It was natural for me because I'm a natural. I like people, right? So if you didn't have derogatory intentions toward me, I'm cool for the most part, right? But you see that even from an American standpoint when you start to travel outside of the country, right? It's one of the reasons why so many Native people who were born in the United States don't speak another language. It's because, the whole world is trying to be like us. They want to speak English, so we don't have to do any of that other stuff. And so it is a mindset. So even for me as an American, when I left the country, I had to be like, okay, like this is on me. I have to come in and say everything you just said, Royce. Way we do it in the United States is not the right way. It's not the wrong way. It's just our way. So let me show up in China. Let me show up in Nigeria. Let me show up in South Africa. Let me show up in the UK and just take it in and not judge it, but just try to have a deeper understanding and connection to it so that I could learn a little bit more. So you're right.
And notice what parts of me come alive in those contexts. Parts of me that are not welcome in my little white world. Like that's the thing. That's my assertion to people of privilege is that we've been cut off from parts of ourselves.
Ooh, that's deep.
And that's why I do this work. Like I do it for Torian and Sean and Lynn. Yes. And I do it for myself because there's parts of me that I want back. That my whiteness cut off. And I'm done with that. Like I need those parts back. When I march, it's not for somebody else. It's also for me. So anyway, that's I think the thing we have to adopt. Like that's when you go over, so you nailed it. Like, we got to sit in those cafes and absorb something that is not of me and see what part of us comes forward.
Right.
So okay, so we're in the wrap up. First off, so I want to see Sean's wig. What are you working on there, man? you got a project going.
I do. And really, okay. So I really had to rush. So
what are we looking at here?
So it's just a wig, but when I wigs are my favorite thing to do. I do them, but I wanted to do wigs that look like things that my mother could wear, that my grandmother and my aunts could wear, not the culture of the long Kardashian hair or that. And
Yep.
I wanted wigs because even the way I look at hair is like I want you to be an everyday woman who can afford to come and get her hair done every 2 weeks, or I want you to look like and long hair has its place, but it's an editorial work. Or long if your hair is not naturally long, it should not be that you're wearing 30 inches of hair all the time because it's not effective. It's actually like it's not effective. I wanted to do hair and then I didn't see a lot of good wigs because my family has, and you can't see it now, but I am starting to gray in the temples. My family has beautiful gray hair. But if you see it, you see old wigs. My aunts weren't old when they had gray wigs, so you had to find good wigs for them that have the right mix of grays or the right mix. So looking at because I grew up around a variety of strong professional women who did a variety of things. My hair, and they were all mostly black. They were black. But their hair, the hair that they needed to be effective in their careers and to be easy, needed to look like a nice structured haircut or a nice cute thing that they could put on. And as my grandmother would do when she wore her wig, Lord have mercy, put it on and then take it off when she got home and throw it across the house.
That's what I do with mine too.
I don't even wear them. I don't wear them. They hurt my head. But he also started to do wigs for his sister when she went off to college and she started she didn't want to have to deal with her hair because he did her hair all the way up until she went to college and she went to undergrad and graduate school. So he would buy her wigs, color her wigs, style her wigs, and send them to her. And then she'd wear them until they needed to be restyled and washed and whatever, and she'd put them in an envelope and mail them back to him. So she was his guinea pig, and he made her, and he was like, he's done her wigs all through her college career, and she's still there. Now with COVID, she's like, I'm not, it's hot, I'm not wearing nothing, I'm
Well, and I mean, I have to just like, Sean, you are such a beautiful man. Thank you. Like, I mean, just the way you talk about the women in your life and the way you have just unabashedly said, to be so forward with your feelings and just being like, I'm afraid to walk in my neighborhood, like in addition to all the standard, like, this is how I do things, but to be so upfront about, I love working with hair, and this is what I see the people that I love wrestling with, and so I want to support this. Like, that is all work of the heart. It like I had no I when I saw this story, y'all, I had no idea that this is what was behind it all. So I want to ask a question here of all three of y'all, because when I read about Walks with Sean, like I saw that, and like, okay, this movement is spreading, and as you mentioned, Lynn, like, okay, but what's next, right? And the question of white guilt, which I know I've got plenty of, and have definitely, I'm guilty of my white guilt. I stand convicted, and like, sometimes good things come out of it. I don't really care why people are marching with BLM right now, why white people are showing up. I just know I'm glad it's happening. But this is the question that haunts me.
So
how many
wait.
times?
So with that
Yeah.
with that question, do we go post with the question, or you want to roll with it now?
I want to roll with it now, and then we'll have more in the post.
Do your thing.
But it's, how many times have y'all seen white people go back to sleep?
Absolutely, yes.
Every
time.
All the time. I think, and this time, and I think this is, I'm gonna say something. It's gonna be really controversial, but this time was different because the thing is, with these walks, talking about it, because we've had some very privileged conversations with white people about how they were being affected, and I'm like, it's already cost me my job. My mother's already being harassed on her job. It cost me my job. My mother's being harassed on her job. You about to give me some reparation? Literally, you can go to sleep, but you're going to run me some money so that I can make it better for not just me, but for the people who look like me, for kids who will come after me, so that I can affect my neighborhood. So it was I willingly gave up my job, but it cost me something. So your tears, you still get to go home and close your door and be a white person in America. But I am a black man who shared his emotions, and my whole world is Walk with Sean, and I'm great. The thing that you said earlier, I forgot your name. I'm bad.
Royce
Royce.
or
I'm
Torian?
sorry.
Yeah.
Was that about my favorite color? Will always be pink. It has always been my favorite color. When we started talking about branding, We Walk with Sean, the color I chose was hot pink because I wanted to normalize it for little black boys who were told that they were a certain kind of way because they wore pink. So I'm like, I got pink sneakers. I don't wear sneakers, by the way. That is not me. I have sneakers now. I have more sneakers now than I've had in the past probably 15,
30.
16 years, mama.
30.
30 years, like but they're pink, and I have pink t-shirts and pink logos because I was like, I'm going to tear down these structures that held me bound to be a free man and exist. Like, it's very interesting to see, and I'm gonna get in trouble for this, that white men could wear long hair and nothing was wrong with that, or be fashion forward and nothing was wrong with that. Me and Torian could tell you, if you wear the wrong color or you have a different kind of hair, don't dare get a manicure. Don't dare groom yourself.
The guilt that I felt when I got my first manicure and pedicure, I really felt all of that conditioning come up. Like, boy, I'm not supposed to be here, and is this a certain way? Is my so I'm identifying with everything you're saying, man. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're right. Yes.
So it's like, those are the things. So what happens next is yes, we need to affect the neighborhood, and yes, I'm going to walk in cities. I'm coming to Albuquerque. I'll come.
Are you?
I will come.
Yes.
We
But
gotta plan the
is
walk. We can't just show up though.
yeah, you got to help us.
All right. We'll figure something out.
You got to put in that work, Royce. Got to put in that work.
It's really easy.
Convicted.
It's not hard. But
All right. Yeah.
but I'm raising awareness. But it's again, we know the story is not this is the story. There are article upon article that have come out about next door recently
Yep.
to talk about different neighborhoods. A bodybuilder, a black guy, hit me up from Atlanta suburb and said, "This is my neighborhood," and I'm like, so it's like we get punished for being in affluent spaces. When I went to Shaker Heights, Ohio, the other day for our first national walk a couple of weeks ago. It was the first time in my life as a black man that I went to a mall and saw black people existing freely without judgment or being surveilled in a luxury shopping environment.
As long
And
as
I'm 30 years old.
of groups of 2 or more, right?
Right.
Right.
And everybody was almost black, including it was
Yeah.
like, and there was a sex, and
Mm.
even the clothes looked like black people should buy them. It wasn't even like they. It was this beautiful. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This environment is for me and my neighbor, not me. But that's what has to happen. If I would go to my neighborhood, my neighborhood wall is the affluent mall in Nashville. But there's some stores you better not. I can't just go into Burberry without them looking at me. I can't afford anything in there. But without them going, what do you want to buy?
Right. Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
That's
I
a real
think
thing.
so.
So
Yeah.
the other thing I will say is the difference in this time is that when what I was saying to a friend, and I made sure that I put it on her post yesterday, was that every other time that a young black man or young black woman was negatively affected, killed by police officers, had a negative interaction, whatever, white people looked at it and went, "Oh, that's so sad." When I saw Trayvon Martin, he was my kid's age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Mike Brown was my kid's age.
Mm.
You know, I grieved like that mother. I was, because it could have been Sean. It could have been, Sandra Ballard. My daughter is a really big time activist. And so Sandra Bland, I always used to tell my kids all the time, I'm not gonna bail you out of jail. So don't go. I'm not gonna be your first phone call. Don't go to jail. Don't go. That was just my thing. I had to change my stance. And I had to tell my daughter, I said, Amber, you're gonna make me be a person that has to bail you out of jail. Because I cannot stand the thought of you being locked up in a jail and dying because the jail would not survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this time you had to watch it for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yeah.
You could not explain it away. You
Yeah.
could not justify it. And they were like, well, he must have been doing something wrong. Well, take him to jail, trial, jury, trial by jury, take him to jail. And none of these things. And so now you've had to walk in this, and folk had to sit in the fact that, okay, yeah, he might have been guilty of something, even if he was or was not. But it wasn't a death penalty case. None of them were death penalty cases. None of them were death penalty cases. And that's what we have to keep saying. We know the justice system. The justice system needs to be corrected. But y'all need to admit that there is a problem. Y'all have to admit that policing came from slave patrol.
Yeah.
Those are the uncomfortable conversations that you have to have. And then you had to swallow when Kaepernick was kneeling for police brutality. You're like, oh, so that's what you meant. Duh, we've been saying that.
Yeah. Well, and even with that, the narrative has been twisted to where the perception is about a flag and stuff like that. But
with that.
Yeah, and it never has. And it's but what's interesting to me, because you're talking about tipping points. Like right now we're hitting a tipping point. So to answer your question, Royce, yes, every single time people forget, because as people, unless it directs us, it effectively directs hits us in a direct way. I can't speak. Affects us in a direct way. We rarely gravitate toward it, just as human beings, right? I mean, I'm speaking as a man, right? So I'm aware of feminine issues and things that happen, but candidly, so even now that I have two nieces, right, I process and see things differently because I'm projecting my eyes and vision onto them and how they're experiencing the world as young ladies, right? So I think this is a pivotal point, and it can be an exponential way in which human beings can springboard forward. But you're absolutely right, Lynn. It comes from the standpoint of how do we self-assess? How do we acknowledge even when it's difficult? And that takes courageous. I mean, I keep going back to courageous vulnerability because I think everything is centered around it, but people have to do that individually. And we can do that. And I think there is a large group of people who actually have been neutral, but are actually starting to care and or listen a little bit more. But then I also will say, I also think that they're part of the larger movement that may have different motives that are not necessarily aligned toward equity in the Black community. And we have to be mindful of that too, because we have to call that out.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're about to we're closing our live stream here, and we're gonna continue the conversation. We're gonna send a new link to y'all, and we'll just choose some more and like make sure that anything that we missed in this we're getting.
Yes.
And I'm also gonna have to pick your brains on what it's gonna take to get that walk here in Albuquerque. That sounds great. I'm
Give us a
already
little bit more
picturing
time.
where to do it.
We're coming back.
We're good.
But when we talk about more, better, different, the thing that struck me, Lynn, from our conversation on Friday, and that I heard so clearly in what Sean, what you said, is this notion, just this statement of values that says everybody's a neighbor. And like, what does that really mean? What does it mean to walk out the front door, look around and say, these are all my neighbors? What does it mean to go to the grocery store, especially right now in COVID, right? Where we got to wear these damn uncomfortable masks. And it's not just for my protection, it's for my neighbor's protection. And why do I not want to be sharing all that stuff at the store? Because you're my neighbor. Everybody's a neighbor. Like what you're talking about is not just about the black-white divide in this country. It's about COVID, and it's why this country is screwing it up and why we are hurting for it.
Right.
You know?
Right. And I think, to me, and I've said this, it was one of them God moments that came out of my mouth, and it sounded smarter than anything I could come up with. At no point in your life, period, point blank, no matter who you are you not someone's neighbor. When you are born, if you are born in a hospital like most Americans are, or most people in the world are born in hospitals, you are then, right after birth, taken to a nursery. You are someone's neighbor. Then when you come home to an apartment or a house with your family, you're somebody's neighbor. When you're in school in a classroom, you're somebody's neighbor. When you're in summer programs or camps, you're somebody's neighbor. When you go to college in dorm rooms, you're somebody's neighbor, and the cycle turns around and starts over. Even to the point where when you are dead and you are in a cemetery, you are somebody's neighbor. Cemeteries are real estate property. You buy a piece of land to live on. You are somebody's neighbor, and everything you do as someone's neighbor affects. If I hit you, you're gonna fall. If I push you, you're gonna fall. If I'm successful, if I have a birthday party in school, my mom brings cupcakes for the whole class. You're my neighbor. It affects me. But if I have a party and invite the neighborhood, it affects the neighborhood. But if I commit a crime in my neighborhood, property values go down.
It affects the neighborhood.
It affects the neighborhood. So everything I do, and I think this is when you take the onus on yourself, everything I do affects me. If I don't vote, I'm sorry, I had to go there. If I don't vote, it affects my neighbors. It affects my well, it doesn't matter it actually matters. And local elections matter because if I vote, then it changes. Okay, that's my
I'm with you, bro.
Everybody's a neighbor.
I'm with you. I say that to people all the time. Don't come talking to me about the big stuff on the news that we're being programmed with if you don't even know who your local representation is. Like, we can't. It's hard for me to even have that conversation. So I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys sharing the space. Hold on a second. We're going to come back and kind of wrap things up. So I'm going to put you guys in the green room for a second, okay?
Okay.
All right. Whew. That was a good one, man. That was a good one.
This, I, I, like I said, huge thanks to folks who are watching and are engaging around this stuff and are sharing it. And huge thanks to the guests that are just dropping on. Like, this show is not making any money. We don't pay our guests.
No.
So when people come on here, it's purely out of just, I want to engage in good conversation,
Yeah.
and have a space where the heart comes forward and comes first. And just, meeting Sean and Lynn was one of the highlights of my week. Like,
Yes.
this was
Yes.
such a gift. So
it's great, man. It's always good to share this space with you. And just for, I mean, I'm looking at the comments, is all kind of comments, the viewers, people who are listening to this. If you feel that you know someone who needs to hear this type of message, just heartfelt conversations with people, please make sure you share it on. Again, this is not even about money. It's about understanding that where our energy goes, grows. And when we
Yep.
understand that, and we're putting positive things out, when we're putting healing, when we're putting solutions out, it doesn't mean that we cower. It doesn't mean that we're meek or that we're docile. It just means that in the process of actually growing, that we're taking a different approach. Please pass this on, share it, stream it, whatever you need to do. But we want to make sure that as we're engaging with everybody and this content comes around, that this is actually a value add to people's lives, regardless of your racial background, your culture, and stuff like that. And, if there are people who can't listen to something like this and have a broader dialogue, these are the people that probably need to hear it the most, to be quite honest with you. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it, man.
Torian,
my
thank
brother.
you for your courageous vulnerability, man. Yeah.
Happy birthday, dude. What are you, like, 23?
Thank you, my friend. Oh, I'm level 46, baby. Level 46. I told you we level up.
I'm with you. That's what's up.
I don't know when I get my in-game gear here, but we got to go.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you all for listening, and see you later. All right. See if I can do this. This is going to be real weird. But I'm gonna see if I can end it without ending that broadcast, and it doesn't look like that's the case. Let me see.
Nope.
Oh, no. Yeah, you can. Hold on. It's one.
I'll go check.
Nah, I'm just gonna call him back. Everybody gets to see it. It's all good. I'm just gonna end this and come back. All right.